Hi, everyone, and welcome to Legal Limelight. Today's guest is my good friend Alex Locke. He's currently general counsel at a modern character driven entertainment brand, aka V Friends. For those of you who know Gary Vee or who know about NFTs and Web3, V Friends is an amazing company that is owned by Gary Vee, and he created these really cool characters that he turned into NFTs during the NFT heyday. And now it's one of the top entertainment brands out there. And Alex has had the opportunity to do some pretty cool collaborations, which we'll get all into. But really excited to chat with you today, Alex. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Francesca. I'm real happy to be here.
Of course. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about why don't you tell us how you ended up in-house? I think that's a good starting point.
Sure. I think to paint the most context, I guess maybe even how I got into the field could be helpful. Um,
Yeah.
I guess every hero and every villain, depending on who you ask, where I would fall, has an origin story. So I guess I'll start with mine. There was a project in middle school in our shop class, which, believe it or not, led to my career as an IP attorney, and more specifically in some of the niches that I've fallen into. But every year, in our shop class in middle school, there was a final project where you got to tinker with various technology, and one of the projects was you got to bring in your own shirt and make your own shirt using an old screen printer. And you can imagine how that typically went. It was kind of a contest who could make the most scandalous or nefarious shirt without getting caught. But I kind of went in a different direction. At the time, the comedy movie Howard and Kumar Go to White Castle had just came out, and I was 12 or 11 or 12, and so I was not old enough to see a rated R movie. My mom wouldn't let me see it, but I got my hands on the VHS anyway, and so I always believe that fashion and the things you wear are a great, or the best way to kind of show who you are and how you feel. And so I wanted a White Castle shirt, but I couldn't have my mom get one because I wasn't supposed to have seen the movie. And so I designed my own shirt, brought in my Hanes white tee into class, and made my own White Castle shirt. And that kind of sparked my passion for creativity and design. Now, about like 10 years and a couple hundred slider burgers later, I found myself in a sports law class at University of Michigan, and it dawned on me that maybe 10 years prior, when I was 11, I actually created an unlicensed White Castle Hanes collab. And so I was sitting in that classroom. I realized I could combine my creative endeavors and pursuits and the law into a cohesive career.
Yeah.
And so that kind of put me on this journey. And um, I guess it was a long-winded way of saying how I ultimately discovered IP. But if you fast forward many years, I started my career in-house actually at a brand licensing agency where, lo and behold, one of my first clients that I was representing actually was White Castle, and how I was in a unique full circle position to actually make officially licensed collaborations. And it wasn't really a popular quote from the movie, but it really stuck out to me in this larger anecdote, which is what Harold said at the end: the universe seems to unfold as it should. And I still actually keep the first pair of sneakers that I did for White Castle by my desk to kind of remind me of this. And here's the Puma White Castle
It's amazing.
collaboration. And so that was where I started my career, and I loved being in house. Some of the things that came with it, being very close to the business and actually seeing the impact directly on a day to day. And so I had always had a feeling that maybe that would be something I wanted to return back to, but also I always loved taking on new roles or learning new things
Challenges.
from the business. And so I had always thought that one day maybe I'd be able to combine my business and creative side with my legal acumen to kind of create something myself. And so if you fast forward a bunch of years from there, I was an associate at Wilkie Farr Gallagher's IP and Tech Transactions group, as well as their digital works group. And a bunch of our clients began increasingly asking us to advise on NFT matters. And I ended up one night, I was actually at a party, and one of my friends started screaming that he owned IP. And like I do, that up until recently, outside of us IP nerds, like intellectual property wasn't very well discussed.
No.
only amongst lay people, but even amongst lawyers. And so I was kind of taken aback. I figured like this person probably can't even spell IP. I doubt they own any IP of value. And so anyway, it turns out what he was talking about was an NFT that he owned, and that he was of the belief that he owned intellectual property rights within or in and of the character. And so I actually went home that night, started reading. It was a Board Ape Yacht Club NFT. Started reading their terms of sale, and then their terms of service. And I don't know if he owned it per se, but I kind of came up with this idea that there was enough there that I would be able to monetize if I was able to get the rights. And so I called some old licensing contacts from my first role out of school and said, hypothetically, if there was an attorney who had a legitimate Delaware LLC with exclusive rights to a large laundry list of these desired characters, would that be something you'd be interested in? He said, yes. Where can I find that person? And I said, you're talking to him.
Amazing.
So I started that company. And then when Gary was looking for someone with a very specific set of experience and skill set, at that time, I was kind of one of few, if not the only person that had done all the things I had done prior in the legal realm, but then also in the NFT and Web3 sphere. And then that's kind of how this all came to be.
It's really like such a fascinating thing that your experience literally with White Castle, your knowledge about NFTs. I don't know if everyone here believes in manifesting, but I think that like by you putting yourself in those situations, and I've known Alex, I've known you for a while. We went to law school together, and I just always remember your ambition. Like that's how we connected. We were really passionate about the fashion industry, and that's kind of like what we centered our career on originally. So I don't think it's luck. I think that you really put yourself in those positions because you were passionate about them, and you said it yourself. Like if you could combine your passion for the things that you love and enjoy with the law, then that's a win.
100%. And look, I mean, I think you embody that a lot as well. And I've definitely drawn a lot of inspiration from you. This was actually something I said on stage a few weeks ago when I was accepting an award on behalf of NFIB Holdings, my NFT licensing company, where I said, as lawyers, we give advice, and sometimes it's hard to take advice, even though we're always giving it. And one example that stands out to me is, when I was in driver's ed and I was told to stay in my lane, that made sense to me and I did that. But oftentimes in my career, and I know in yours, you're told to kind of just stay in your lane, stick to the contracts and purely legal work. And I wasn't as good at following that advice. If I see a problem or what I think could ultimately be an opportunity, I'm going to go after it. And, maybe that's atypical, but I know the same is with you. And here we both are. So I definitely agree.
Yeah, I think, I get a lot of calls from, I'm more selective about the law students that I get now, or the mentoring calls that I get, but they tend to fall into two camps. They fall into the camp of they're complaining, they're or really, really, really obvious. It's very obvious that they want something from me, like they want a job or they're asking for something. Or the other camp of students where they say, I'm passionate about this industry. I'm enthusiastic about intellectual property. All I want to do is be an IP lawyer. All I want to do is be an entertainment lawyer, etc. And that latter category, they end up, and I tell them this, like by you being really clear about what you want, you're going to ultimately achieve. If you put yourself in the right places, if you have a good attitude, and if you're enthusiastic. That first category, when I get them, I immediately cut them off. This happened yesterday, Alex. Like, I think this girl was like shocked and probably terrified of me now. But she texted me asking if I could have a call. She was looking for a job and needed help. So of course, like I wanted to tell her, well, you haven't talked to me in 4 years, but like fine. But then the conversation actually started with, during COVID, it was this, and then this job that I didn't really like, and it was just like one negative thing after the other after the other. And I literally like was like, Stop. You're being so negative and you're talking about the things that you don't want. Like you're attracting those things to you versus, the other category of students that come in and say, this is what I want. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I would love to pick your brain to see what it is that you do and if you have any advice for me. So I know it's really harsh, but like I had to do it.
I mean, that's exactly right. And I've been on both sides of that conversation, both when I reached out to you way back when, and now when, law students sometimes find me. And look, like, I totally agree. On the one hand, you know, we're in a very niche industry that's very hard to break into, so it's not lost on me. And, both you and I, at varying degrees have went through that struggle to get to where we are. And it's unfortunate. There's no real clear path to your point. And so I remember my career counselor when I was in law school saying, "What you want to do doesn't exist, and there's no path, and you should just do something normal or general." To which I didn't take that advice. Now, like at the time, I didn't know at this date or in this year I'm going to go here and do that, but I did have a plan and a larger vision, and you know everything was intentional, and I took very to the point of I don't like this, I don't like that. Like I think internships serve multiple purposes. Obviously, resume building, of course, but then it's a really great avenue for you to both find out what you like,
Yeah.
but also equally as valuable is find out what you don't like. And so I actually got more value from the internships, not even necessarily not the company itself or maybe the boss or whatever, but the actual day to day work. It's a lot more valuable, or at least for me, I found it valuable. There were things in theory that I always thought I wanted to do, and then when I was doing them, I didn't love as much. And then I was able to rule out because look, IP is a niche in and of itself, but then there's a million sub niches within that, and so it's not. Look, a lot of people fall into what they end up doing, and sometimes it's somebody goes on maternity leave and you take a matter, and it turns out you're great at it and love it. But also, you still need to be intentional and select and pursue what it is you want to do. And so, by being able to rule things out and then affirm other things, you're able to really narrow your focus, and a lot of your experience might not be you're building towards something. It might not be exactly the thing that you ultimately end up wanting to do or will do, but everything is you can learn from every experience, and there are things that are either relatable or you can build on. And so I would always say it's funny. It's a lot. I get a lot more joy out of saying it now than I did when I was trying to find my career or
Yeah.
find where I was going. But I'd always said, like, to 99% of employers who review my resume, they'll have no idea what they're looking at, and it won't make any sense. And then to that 1% of it, oh my God, I didn't know somebody like this exists. And so obviously it's frustrating and hard when you're going through the 99%. But then when you ultimately find that 1% that gets what you did, why you did it, and then your real asset and value, um, you know, really ultimately ended up paying off. And it's a grind and it's a journey, but if you stick with it and ultimately end up finding your way, it's well worth it. Like I wouldn't want to do anything else. Now, not to say I couldn't or wouldn't if I absolutely needed to, but fortunately, my plan, if you will, worked out.
No, and it's funny your plan. Like it's true. We can. I think everyone needs a goal. We all need goals, but you don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know where you're going to end up. I think rewind 10 years. Alex and I thought we were going to be general counsels at fashion companies, right? But by throwing ourselves into our passions and our interests, things have evolved and unfolded along the way that have created different opportunities. So what advice do you have for people who are looking for the next thing or who are interested in a career in IP, but they're really, they're not sure on how to get there? What's your advice to them?
My advice would be open minded, and resilient. I would say, one thing I noticed, if we go back to my anecdote in my life when I was in college and discovered what IP was and realized, because I was really torn prior to that epiphany,
Yeah.
if you will, because I knew I'd always wanted to be a lawyer, but I can only speak for myself, but I feel like most non-lawyers, especially children, growing up thinking they want to be a lawyer, like I only really knew about like Law and Order and the OJ trial. And so, I thought, okay, I'm going to be in court looking for like the smoking gun and whatnot. I didn't really know that this type of law exists. And so, I was like, thought I would be sacrificing my creativity or business savvy in order to, I thought these two things were at odds, but ultimately I was able to realize that actually they were, you know, they could be married in a cool way. And so I would say to, be open minded and take on things that, maybe seem off. I don't want to say off point, but, I would say try other things as well. Like to the earlier point with the internships, you don't need if you want to work in IP or work in this space, every single internship doesn't need to be an IP related internship. Now, of course, I wouldn't say go do something totally unrelated, but I mean, one thing I noticed when I was in college was this shift as well, where I'm kind of from outside of the legal lens, more on like a business and kind of technological way of the future lens. I realized like, okay, when you back in the day when you used to buy companies, you're buying manufacturing plants and equipment and what I guess they call now human capital, which is employees, people. But then I noticed, now it was the rise of the crazy app when I was in college, is when every company was coming out with an app and companies were apps. And so if you looked at the largest transportation company at the time, they didn't own any automobiles. That was Uber, right? All their assets, they have a logo and branding and an app. That's all IP. Same goes with the largest real estate company at the time, Airbnb. They didn't own any property. And so all that is to say that the lines are kind of blurring of what was traditionally segmented, both, I guess, sectors and roles. Like now, if you're a t-shirt company, you're not just a t-shirt company anymore. If you have an Instagram and you have a website, you're an international technological business.
Yeah.
And so, I think the modern council, to be really effective and really ultimately break through, it's not, I don't want to say it's not enough, but to really be the best counselor you can be, you need to know about all these different areas that maybe you didn't in the past. And so whether that's taking a detour in data privacy or taking a detour in, just general regular commercial contracts or logistics or software licensing, all these things are now interrelated. And so I think, that sounds frightening or could sound frightening, but I think it presents a lot of opportunity because, as we said, there's no direct path. Maybe save for a few select people. Like, look, if I could go back in time to when I was 18 selecting my major, I probably would tell myself to major in science because then I'd be eligible for the patent bar. Obviously, I didn't know that at 18, and most people don't. And so, I didn't have that luxury. And so there's no clear path. And look, if you're counseling someone, let's say it's a creator who wants to launch a Shopify and wants to use their customer list, if you can advise them on what they can do with their customer data and what they can't, and also how they can make the right products and sell them, well, now that's another matter that you're able to advise on. It makes you more valuable, both in that context, but as larger. So I would say I would look at all the different things that IP immediately touches, which I just stated a few of them, but also things that are in the larger web. And if you can't get something, an internship or a next role directly on point, I would say work around the edges and then work your way in. That's kind of what I did. And so, I would say be open minded and flexible, but also don't give up. Always know whether have a plan. It doesn't need to be concrete, but okay, this company has an opening in data privacy, but they also have a big IP department. Maybe I'll take on some matters or help out or meet somebody internally that works on IP stuff and then gain their trust and then be able to get more and more work and then take it from there.
I love that. And it's funny, like before we jumped on, we're like, what are we going to talk about? And Alex was like, well, I've been watching your shows, so I feel like they're a little bit informal. I really don't know what we're going to talk about when we're on here. I usually just kind of like, we have like conversations as if Alex and I were in Bryant Park drinking coffee. But I think it's huge. I think it's a testament to your career, and it's also great for this is why we do them publicly instead of privately. um, we're giving everyone the benefit of listening to, the general counsel at a very, very well-known company tell you some wonderful advice that I don't think most of us hear, especially in like our social media driven world, because you in LinkedIn, right? Like, oh, Alex got a promotion, Francesca started her firm. You only see those things in a vacuum, but what really it takes to get there is, like Alex said, it's hard work, being open minded. It's this unwavering, belief in yourself, even when you feel like you can't believe in yourself, to just take one step forward. So thank you for sharing that, because I think this is going to be helpful for a lot of people.
No, no problem. And I couldn't agree more. I was actually just thinking right before you said that, I'm like, wow, I really wish somebody did this and I'd watched this when I was in law school or first starting out, because, it's easy to say now. And to your point, I don't, neither myself nor anyone else, you don't put on LinkedIn or Instagram or otherwise all the rejections or it just shows the jobs you got. It doesn't show the thousands that you didn't get. And so, there were points in my career, or at least when I was starting, even, when I was starting or trying to start my career, where it looked impossible. And, maybe there were definitely some times where I was like, maybe a few applications or a few rejections away from saying, all right, I guess like I couldn't make this work, or it's time to give up. And, you know, you never know, that one more interview, that one more coffee, I've been on to your earlier point with, networking, of course, in the back of your mind, depending on the purpose or where you are, like, of course, in the back of your mind, you're always like, okay, it'd be great if this person just did a good job and then I'm done. But that can't be the sole motivation. And it certainly can't convey that that's your motivation. And so, like,
Almost
you're
a
going
little
to,
bit. Like,
and look, and now that I have more experience and I'm further in my career, like when I first reached out to you, of course, in the back of my mind, I was like, I hope she got her firm at the time has an internship for me. In hindsight, the value of just knowing you and then us collaborating in the future, way more valuable than that internship that you didn't have could have ever been. But so you kind of just need to be in it, and you never know. Like, yeah, a lot of the coffees and networking and calls you're going to take might not lead to something, or directly. It could indirectly down the road, but you need to do it because you never know, that one conversation with one person. And so, um, if it's something you really want to do and are really driven to, then stay at it. Now, of course, people need to make a living, so that's not to say you can't. If this is what you want to do, you need to get a job doing exactly what you want to do the minute you graduate law school. I wouldn't set that expectation for yourself, because that's, um, I'm not gonna say it's unlikely, but it's rare. And you know, most people don't end up retiring from the place that they went to right after school. So
yeah, it's just like getting started. And I think like the most important thing is your network. And I'm saying all of this in hindsight, right? And it took me 10 years to learn, but I think it'll be helpful for others to share that when I meet young people, or I meet anyone, right? Like I can tell within probably less than 30 to 60 seconds if you are a transformational person or a transactional person. So there's those the two different types of relationships that you can have, and this is relevant in like the professional space. So if there are people who think networking is to get something. So you're having a conversation with someone because they're going to give you a job or they're going to give you an internship. It's palpable and very, very obvious. And so what I look for instead is I in myself in business, I look for transformational relationships. So when I'm having lunch or coffee with, someone who's in-house, I'm not sitting on the other side. Hey, do you have work to give me? Do you want to hire me? Can we do your trademarks? I don't do it. It's the equivalent of sitting down and having a date, going to dinner with a first date and asking them to marry you. Like no one does that. So it doesn't work in business and it doesn't really work in networking. When you meet someone, ask who are you? What do you do? Like, where do you live? Just ask about them. And then if you like this person and it's a good fit, then you nurture the relationship like a seed and you take care of it. You show up for them. And usually at the end, if you've had 6 touch points with this person, they will probably send you work if they like you. So it's more about these relationships. And I feel like this gets missed and this isn't really taught in law school, but it's been the secret to this is how I have my life. This is how I have my business. Like I like people and I want to figure out who people are. I don't reach out to people because I need something.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's pretty spot on. In all respects, I think law school is great and I learned a lot, but I do think there are definitely some shortcomings with the law school education as it relates to what you actually do in practice. What you just said being a big one. Um, you know,
Just be a human. Just talk to people like a human.
I can look. I can see why it's hard with for some people the way a law school is and the way some firms operate. But at the end of the day, and if you want to be like you and start your own firm, or you want to make partner at a firm, um, you know, yeah, of course you need to be great at your respective subject matter and be an expert and provide great counsel. But you need to be a good and likable person because I have an interesting perspective now because I was at a firm and now that I'm in house and I'm in the position where I'm looking for firms to hire for specific matters. Of course I want to hire someone who's excellent and expert in the respective matter or just or subject matter that I'm working on, but I want to enjoy talking to them. And so there's I don't want to say there's almost an expectation that they're going to be great lawyers, but there is. Um, but also, I don't want to feel like it's transactional all the time. And I'm watching the clock, or it's a chore because they're an ally, and I want to feel comfortable and enjoy talking to them. And so, whether that's outside counsel or really anyone, there's enough people that are looking for things that it's nice to know they're when there's a like-minded person interested in the same or similar things as you with similar levels of expertise, that you can actually just have a normal conversation and bounce ideas off each other without it being transactional. And so I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And look, if the more people know, like you, and respect you and your work, I think it's about playing kind of the long game, and then it comes back um, tenfold, rather than you might get a quick matter, but people will be annoyed and then go to someone else. I'd rather foster the relationship, as you said, wait, and then who knows what it could be. But that's something that I've found where it's like there were times where I helped people out earlier in my career who referred certain things to which people were like, you could have charged for that, or you could have gotten a referral fee or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but like, is it worth a few $1,000s now, which could be a much larger endeavor 5-10 years from now when they remember. It's the same thing, same way I feel now with to the earlier point with law students who call. I definitely put them in similar camps as you did. It's like, do you have a job? Let me send you my resume. If someone sends a resume before you ever talk, that's usually a good indication. Um, but today's law student is tomorrow's partner or inventor or founder or general counsel, and so I think I also see myself in that where I'm like, either there was someone like Francesca who took the meeting and really helped me out and gave me great advice, and so I want to do the same, or B, there were people that I didn't do that, and I thought they really should have, and it was kind of crummy. And I was like, I'm never going to be like that, and so I see myself a lot, oftentimes in law students who are looking to break into either this field or related fields, And so I'm always pretty happy, I'm not just going to take a resume. Sometimes I've had really weird scenarios where like someone will call me and say they want advice and then not show up and just send a resume. I'm like, I don't know,
Ah,
but anyone who actually genuinely wants to learn or hear about it, because I know I did, and I still find people's paths interesting. I'm going to take the call if I have time, because you never know like when the difference you can make in someone's life, and then what they're going to end up doing. So let's say it's a law student today who you help out, whether through finding them a job, helping them find a job, or just giving them advice that ultimately leads them down a successful and engaging path. 10, 15, 20 years from now, they could be, in a position like us and looking for someone to help them with something. And who are they going to recall? The person who, helped get them started and gave them really impactful advice that got them to where they are. I would say there's a pretty good chance they're going to reach out to you. So,
I love that. Yeah. And the key is just to give and give. Alex, thank you for giving today with all of this, these candid overview of your career path and these great tips. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy your Halloween. I put this, our spooky
thank
setting.
you. Yeah, I realized it was Halloween, so I decided to dress up like a lawyer today.
I joke that I'm a tired lawyer mom, but yeah. with Starbucks.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, and I love chatting with you.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone who tuned in. This was Legal Limelight. We're here every Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you next week.